Harley was like perhaps more bothered by Sissy's betrayal. Like, we'll run away together. I don't have anything keeping me here. Let's go.
I was kind of expecting Anne Harlan.
Yeah.
But she never. You're right. She didn't bring that up. She was like, let's just ditch the kid. Hey, Internet. It's Paul. It's Matt. The Dork Lords. We are here talking about Umbrella Academy, Season 2, Episodes 3 and 4, The Swedish Job, and The Majestic 12. The Majestic 12 reminds me of the name of my comedy group back in the day. We were The Hypothetical 7. Yes, the Majestic 12. Which apparently, I had to look this up. I did not, maybe you knew this, Paul, but it's an actual thing. Like, an actual conspiracy theory involving the Majestic 12. It wasn't just made up for the show. The Majestic 12 supposedly was this, secret group that was all about UFOs.
Anyway. It predates the comic book, The Umbrella Academy.
Correct. I think it was supposedly, according to conspiracy theorists, it was created in the 40s, probably as a result of Roswell or something. But anyway, since we're talking episodes 3 and 4, we begin episode 3. We start with a flashback. Klaus and Ben start up a cult together. I mean, Klaus starts the cult with the help of Ben. Then basically runs out on the cult, realizes, I don't like this life, and kind of, takes off from them. Kind of reminded me a little bit of the show Legion, where David Haller has the cult.
Yes.
Partially also because it's kind of in that time frame. It's kind of the peace and love, hippie cult kind of thing.
What we assume Legion is, but certainly the fashion.
Right.
And the accoutrement leads you to believe that's what is occurring.
Now, David Haller, more powerful than Klaus, but anyway, same idea. Like, super-powered person has these normies worshiping him.
Sure enough.
We then end episode 4 with 5, Diego, and Lila discovering that the leader of the Majestic 12 is Reginald Hargreaves. We're not sure if he's the leader, I guess, but one of
we don't know.
The mysterious 12th member. The mysterious 12th member of the Majestic 12, Reginald Hargreaves. Yes. The Swedes.
You don't know that he's not the 7th or the 3rd.
Well, they had the picture of 11 of the 12, and they're like, "Who's the 12th one?" It must be Reginald Hargreaves, and it was. So the Swedes, the triplets, whatever you call them, the Swedes, catch up with our heroes at this big fancy party where the Majestic 12 is meeting. Lila, we'll talk about her in a second, but she's been ordered to save 5 at all costs. She has a choice to make. Save Diego, getting beat up in one end of the hall, or 5, who's getting beat up at the other end of the hall. She saves 5. Diego sees her making that choice. I'm sure there'll be some repercussions there. Then Reginald drives off after 5 says something to him in, it says, ancient Greek.
Yes.
So, anyway, I'm not sure what that is.
Did you look that up?
I did not.
It's actually the first lines of the Odyssey, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Because apparently he had all the kids reading that, so it's like, I will say this thing that he told us was so important.
Okay, maybe he'll flash something, even though he has yet to meet me.
He would probably recite them as they were doing their ballroom dance lessons.
Good point.
So
good point. And so what that might be is, in the future, that's why he does it. Because he's like, I had to know that you were there in the past. I don't know. Let's talk about Lila, since I just brought her up. I mentioned, I think she's a plant. Well, I thought this was going to be like a late season reveal. Nope. I got 1 episode's worth of cred out of that. She, in fact, is the handler's adopted daughter. The handler being the woman that works with the commission, who has been demoted.
Adopted after she widowed.
Yes.
Not widowed, but parental side.
Right, so we see that. We see that the commission took out her family. We very oddly don't see the assassin's face. And so, it feels like that'll be a reveal. I got the idea that
Maybe
it
not.
looked
I mean, I
like
think
Hazel.
They just didn't have him for that many episodes.
Okay. I mean, you could do a real shocking reveal where it could be 5, for instance. It didn't look like 5.
No, it didn't look at all like
dude.
5.
It was a
He was
yeah.
It was a really tall dude.
So it's probably not 5. Anyway, but you're right. Will that be? I don't know. I got the idea it was Hazel, but it didn't. It certainly didn't say it's 100% Hazel that killed these folks. Yeah. Now, here's what's interesting, and I think
that was interesting.
That was no, a good point. That was not interesting at all, Paul. No, here's theory crafting, which I think is actually. I think I'm right on the money because of something I've been watching for. As I mentioned last time, at the end of season 1, one of the things we said to look for in season 2 was examples of those other 36 kids who have powers, right?
Oh,
they were all born on the same day. All right.
Yeah.
Here's where you put the theory crafty hat on. Bop, 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 bop. The little subtitle that comes on, it's a big subtitle actually, when Lila's parents are killed says, London, England, 1993.
Yes.
She says she was 4 years old at that time.
Yes.
What year would that make her born? 1989. What year were the umbrella can? Oh, it was 1989, was it not? All right.
Okay.
So I think Lila is one of the other 36. That's why the commission came in to kill her parents, because they're like, we want to get a kid. We want one of these magical kids. So they took her as a magical kid. That's that. Now, what powers does she have? I don't know.
Being able to do cartwheels while people are shooting at you, maybe?
Yeah, which is also Diego's power. I don't know. Like maybe she's Diego clone. I don't know, but so anyway, there you go. Let's
clone the baby while it's being born.
she's the twin sister. No, she can't be the twin sister because they didn't kill Diego's parents that way. Anyway, I don't know. I'm just saying. I think Lila is one of those other kids. Sure, and she's got powers probably. What those are, who knows? I could look very stupid in that, but boy, that's really coincidental, right? The same year.
Yes, it is. I agree that it is a strange coincidence.
Okay, as you mentioned off air, the plot really moves along here, and we've got a lot of our characters find themselves in these what I would consider to be like end of act 2 of a movie type arcs. Luther is like, I'm so depressed that he's lost his best friend or his mentor, whatever you want to call it. Jack Ruby, the guy who keeps him grounded, has dismissed him.
Necessarily that's act 2 because he really belongs with his family. So the fact that he's so devoted to Jack Ruby is, to me, seems like something that should be resolved fairly soon.
I got you. Just because obviously we're in episode 4, so it's not act 2. It just there's Allison is broken up with Ray, and he won't. He thinks that she's working for the cops, and that seems like a pretty big split.
Right.
And so there's these big, monumental kind of obstacles to our heroes achieving happiness. And so you're like, oh man, okay. But yeah, so just to recount some of the stuff, for Vanya's story, she kind of cool. We talked about how she never uses her powers.
Yeah,
she got to use her powers for good. In fact, so she rescues Harlan by raising raising a pond.
Yes. She melts a bullet right in front of her face.
Yes.
I think that's a little more.
That's a little more. She makes a crop circle. She makes
a crop circle. Yeah.
She's the origin of the crop circle myth. Actually, everybody's used their power. Allison uses her power as well. So
true. Everybody's
used their powers now. And obviously, we mentioned that we thought there might be a relationship forming between her and Sissy, and in fact, yes. And really interesting line there when before they kiss for the first time is where Sissy says she's talking about how she had created this box around her. And she said something like, the box kept getting smaller and smaller, and you never realize you're in the box until someone lets you out. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, that's actually that's pretty on the nose for Alice for Vanya, right? I mean, she was
Like,
literally.
why didn't you have access to that for your marital vows?
Yeah. But she was locked in a box.
Yes.
I had to let herself out. She meets up with Luther. Luther tells her she was responsible for the apocalypse, which Five was trying to keep away from her. She's kind of disgusted with the whole thing, and it's like, I've changed. I'm not the Umbrella Academy anymore. Leave me alone. And takes off and, goes back to the farm.
Well, I also think she was discouraged. Like, the first person she meets is Luther, and he nearly wants to kill her, and he goes away. And then she, even Five starts to give her a better impression, but he's kind of not really caring about her life too much. And then when she tries to really connect with Luther, then Luther pushes her away.
Right. Well, while they're talking, that's when he's kicked out of his apartment, I think. And so he's like, just leave. I'm mad. And he punches the hole in the wall. She, though, has decided. We don't know what she's decided. She was going to leave the farm to protect the family.
Yes.
And when Harlan hears that, that's what makes him run off and almost drown. And so I think we leave it with she and Sissy are kissing.
Harlan was perhaps more bothered by Sissy's betrayal. Like, we'll run away together. I don't have anything keeping me here. Let's go.
I was kind of expecting and Harlan.
Yeah.
But she never. You're right. She didn't bring that up. She was like, let's just ditch the kid. I think the resolution at the moment is that Vanya is still at the farm, and now she has reason to stay there because has feelings for Sissy that are, now requited and such.
Right.
Let's talk about the Allison thing. So Allison uses her powers to save Ray from being beaten to death in the middle of this big, police beating up the protesters.
Yes. Very timely.
Very timely. So Ray, justifiably doesn't understand. What? I saw you whisper into a cop and he stopped beating me. Why? This is at an age when, in the 90s, if you flash forward a time, the Umbrella Academy are kind of famous. They're all over the place. So she could have just said, hey, I have powers, and here they are. But that's one of the things I didn't think about necessarily in season 1, but that day when all the 43 kids got powers, that's the origin of, if you want to say magic, but the origin of the idea of people having powers in the world. And until that day, if you said, I have powers, people would probably, get you some counseling or something.
Well, I think it's possible she could perhaps frame it like some sort of mesmerism, as we saw in Watchmen.
True.
Or hypnotism, which you certainly had in that day.
Or, so she's put in a position of, okay, if you're not working with the cops, what happened? And she says, I can explain, which is like...
And doesn't.
And then doesn't. You're like, well, then don't say you can. But yeah, so it does make me think, like, what are some strategies she could have used in that moment? Because he gives her an honest chance to explain herself.
Yes.
And she doesn't, and he's like, all right.
She actually has two chances. Like, first in the moment, let's discuss that later.
Yeah.
And then, what's going on? I have had all this time still not to have an answer.
Now, obviously, I would agree with her that the answer is not to use your powers on Ray. I mean, that would certainly not be a good thing to do.
No, well, how would he know?
Yeah, no, he wouldn't know. It would be just on her to know that. Yeah. But point being, that feels evil. Anyway.
Yes, it does.
So she doesn't do that. Good on her. But maybe you need to explain of like, look, I don't know why it worked, but I was desperate to save your life. I begged the cop to not beat you to death, and whatever reason, that particular cop decided, you know what, I'm not going to beat this man to death in front of his wife. That's maybe what I would try to do. No?
Try to lie better.
Okay. In other words, it's just that particular guy. I get it. It doesn't sound, but you know what? I asked him and he stopped. I don't know why. I asked him and he stopped.
Why
go talk to the cop. Go ask the cop why he stopped.
Not to tell him everything. I mean, a reason not to tell him might be like, and if he was convinced, Oh, okay. Now our new plan is.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Oh,
I heard a rumor that all of you beat your heads in.
Yep.
Can all of you expose your connection to the Klan? I heard a rumor.
I mean, imagine her.
That,
I haven't even thought about this, but I mean, we haven't seen this happen. Imagine her on a TV show. Hey, everybody! Welcome to my show. Right. Everybody listening? I heard a rumor you all died. Or whatever. I don't know, like, whoosh. I mean, she can wipe out a population.
Realize that you all are racist.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're gonna make it up to all the black people in town.
It's so true, right? You're right. She could force people to actually be nice to each other.
Yeah.
I heard a rumor. You actually believe that all people are actually created equal.
Yeah, that you actually believe the Bible.
Right. Wow. But I didn't think about it because we've seen her so far just give talk to small groups, either one person or two people, something like that. Imagine if she had a platform and she was a famous actress or something in the
I wonder,
past.
It's like this makes me now curious, not so curious that I'd read the comic, but it's like here we are talking about all these different things that she could do, and most of the series, first and second season, she's not using her
powers. Here's another thing she could do. She was a celebrity, so let's say as she uses her celebrity status and she has like a hit single. The hit single is "I Heard a Rumor." Yeah. It's like she just plays a song and nobody realizes they're getting mind warped, and she just mind warps the world. But anyway, okay. So we just did a cheat code on her power. But all right, that aside, I don't think she can just say, "By the way, I have powers." If I say I heard a rumor, I can force people to do stuff. I mean, she could say that. I just feel like
she would need to show him.
Yeah, she'd have to show
him. She could do that. It's not like they haven't established this commission like only when the moon is out or only when she feels lucky. It's like she's curtailing herself. So
it's just like in that moment,
and she's not even like I mean, sometimes you see someone gain powers, like for instance in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where he discovered through anxiety that he could zap people, and then when he called upon to do it naturally, she's been doing it for years, so she has perfect control over her powers. And that's the unfortunate things. Like the fun thing about superheroes when you see them use their powers in interesting ways, and at least for her anyway, we're not seeing that because either the writers just feel like, she could just talk herself out of anything, or no, that's what I think it is.
I feel like that
they're
she's a plot killer, is what she is.
Yeah.
You're like, no plot is safe if she's around.
Yeah.
So you're like,
Well, I think they did a bad job of not making it one that she needs to be careful about how she expresses herself. That could have ramifications, like, oh shit, you told me to go jump in the lake, and then I jumped in the lake and drowned, or and then I in stopping fighting, it made me have a heart attack and then go crazy later and kill more people or something.
Right.
So yeah, they
the long-term ramifications of
yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Actually, going back to Vanya real fast, it just made me think about it. We do see, I mentioned, she does this, uses her power for good.
Yeah, we do see that.
And we see this notion of she's forgotten all of the terrible upbringing that she had.
Yes.
And so without that background, now that she's, it's like nature versus nurture kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now that she's just, memoryless, we see the possibility that she could be a hero and not a villain. What do we think? How do we think? I mean, she's going to get her memory back. That's going to happen. So
she wasn't a villain in the first one. It was just that she was so scared and abused and angry that she was the threat.
Well, I mean,
so
she gets angry, and it's her
a villain.
Her anger makes her dangerous.
Yeah. Right, but it was as a result of of her relationship in the family, and so she didn't have control of her powers. Now here is a situation though where it's like, not knowing she has powers, it's just in the anxiety, all these things are happening that makes you wonder exactly what the limits of her powers are. But boy, the times that she's been using her powers, it's just been working.
Yeah, but it just makes me think, are we seeing a new, like when she gets her memory back, will then she warp to like angry person who's like basically against the Umbrella Academy? Or is this like the new arc for her where it's like, oh, she's actually going to be a hero now, even when she gets
you're imagining that be the case before the apocalypse, and the apocalypse not the next to last episode or the last episode? Because in the apocalypse, she's not against them.
Right.
They're all together.
Right, exactly.
So
we see that.
you're imagining
but
that
they're changing
before.
events right now. And so I'm just thinking that maybe, for
you don't
instance...
think that that moment is still coming?
I think the moment's coming, yes. I don't know. I'm just...
You're
right.
It might be different by the time they get together. It's like, I can't imagine them wanting to make her someone they're opposed to, and then by the end they're all together. That just doesn't make sense to me.
So you feel like her trajectory...
I was wrong.
You just feel like her trajectory is, I'm part of the team now, in other words.
Well, she's now deciding, she still, at the moment, she doesn't know who she is, and that's what she says, right? Who am I? And so now she's exploring who she is with Sissy.
But when those memories come flooding back, will she be like, screw you guys?
Why would she do that? That's what I'm saying. Why? Right. What's the point of that? You know? She can certainly see with some distance now, especially, I think she had some perhaps knowledge after she nearly killed Allison.
We do see her working with the team, so, in the flash forward to the apocalypse, so that makes sense that she's on board with the team. All right, well, cool. All right, good. I like that.
Because we don't know exactly what is this force and why it's happening, so that should be enough of a plot.
There will probably be a moment, though, where she'll have another conversation with Luther, having remembered that Luther locked her up.
Well,
and she's going to have to forgive him.
Yes, right. But she was portrayed, even though it was innocent, by Allison. So she hasn't even talked to Allison yet. They haven't even.
That's true. Good point. Good point. You're right. There's some blame to go around. Yeah.
Then it feels more likely that she'll have whatever storyline comes out of her and Sissy, where Sissy's husband comes after them, or and perhaps Sissy gets killed or something, or she just she notices that her family is in such trouble that now she feels like, okay, now I can go to them and help them, and I don't want you to die, because if the apocalypse was coming, I don't want my new family to die. So
gotcha. We talked about how one of the more impactful scenes from episodes 1 and 2 was Luther meeting with Vanya in that barn.
Right.
And so it seems like with some more heavy lifting, they're giving Luther some of the emotional weight. It's the scene where he's at the little outdoor picnic area, and Allison shows up, and they meet. He knows that she's married.
Right.
It made him very depressed to know that, but he's playing it off like, oh, everything's good, and she is, Ray just basically abandoned her at this point, and so she's feeling very depressed, but she's like, oh, everything's good, and they have this really touching scene together. So it's just interesting that like Luther, they're giving him some of the tough scenes to pull off, and he's doing it very well. So that actor, well done. He's acknowledging, it's funny, he's like, hey, I get it. You're here all alone, and you don't know where your friends are going to be, and I'm glad you had someone, with that you could turn to. And she interprets that as, yeah, well, you didn't. Like, in other words, like, you can see it. She's like, oh yeah, you managed to stay single. She's like, I never forgot about you, kind of thing. There's some interesting little dynamics going on.
Yeah,
there
she's having cool. She's realizing that she she certainly saw him be pretty torn up about it in the first season. So.
Yeah. He also, that's important because he tells her now she knows the apocalypse is coming. She didn't know that before that moment. Right. So he's like, oh yeah, by the way, in 7 days or whatever, we end the world again. But that's a cool scene. I really enjoyed it. And
that was a good scene.
We've got these, we don't have the team together yet.
No, we don't.
Which, they're going to hold that ball. But we are getting pairings. We're getting, Diego and 5. We have Luther, Vanya, Luther, Allison. Klaus and Ben have been together the whole time, basically. And, Klaus and Allison. Actually, that's a fun scene, too. So, Klaus is trying to, give words of wisdom because he's
Yes,
as we
yes.
talked about, he's a cult leader. So he's
Yes,
like,
yes,
look,
yes.
I have words of wisdom. So he starts the scorpion and the frog tale.
Yes. It tells
Which-
it very badly because he's hungover.
Which see, I remember that the Crying Game was the first time I heard the Scorpion and the Frog.
Oh, okay.
And since the Crying Game, that
Yes.
Scorpion and the Frog has been brought out so many times in shows. So I was a little eye-rolly when he started it, like, oh,
Yeah.
really? But it was great. I love the way they did it, because he's like,
Yeah.
she's like, what's the point of that story? He's like, frogs are bitches. I don't know. So that was good. That was a good way to pull off.
Yeah.
They were making fun of the fact
Yes,
that everybody
yes.
tells that story.
Yeah, he was correct in the reason why he was bringing up that story and saying that, hey, well, you're doing this because this is your nature.
It's your
basically,
nature,
so
yeah.
you shouldn't fight against it. That's the point of the story. But no, Klaus could never tell a story correctly.
Right.
The height of his wisdom is all lyrics that other people have written. So.
Yep. Yeah, good point. Don't go chasing waterfalls. He retreats from the cult that he started. And one of the reasons he does is he leaves California and he goes to find and talk to Dave. Dave was the guy that he got in a relationship with in Vietnam, who then died tragically, in his arms, and really gave him major PTSD and changed his character in a lot of ways. So,
although it probably was a part of why he sobered up. So,
there's a lot of damage, but there's a lot of growth that came with that too.
Yeah, right.
And so he goes to find Dave to try to talk him out of joining the military because he knows, hey, eventually Dave's gonna die.
Right.
And I want to try to save his life. Even though if he were to be successful at that, I mean, he's gonna change his own life a lot too. Like, in other words, he takes himself out of that picture.
I wouldn't put too much. This is the old rules of time travel.
Yeah. Okay.
You can do anything you want to not screw up that you did it.
Because then he wouldn't come back and talk to the guy, and he would never be here in the first place. Okay. No. Okay. So that is a very emotional scene too, because we see, is it his dad? Is it his uncle? I forgot who it is.
Uncle. His Uncle Brian.
Dave's uncle basically pushes Dave into punching out Klaus. Yes. And so here's this guy that you're in love with punching you, and rejecting you terribly, violently. Yes. Yeah. So he goes. Then he starts drinking again. He's been sober, and he's not sober anymore. So that's very impactful. Although I will say this, and we talked about this a little bit before we went on the air. There's this sense of like there's an apocalypse. It's happening in 7 days. Trying to convince this guy not to join the military in 2 or 3 or 4 years is maybe secondarily important to keeping him alive for the next 7 days. Anyway, so it's just interesting how he's like, I want to try to convince him not to be killed off years from now, while I ignore the fact that he's definitely going to die in a week unless I do something major. It's just... It seems like it, and I think it's intentional, that we have these examples of the team just ignoring the obvious. Yes. Like, guys, focus up.
Of course, the show would, if they could always have the appropriate amount of attention and focus on the real big problems,
right?
Then they wouldn't have any lives at all.
It's true. There would just be a very short show. It would be, hey guys, we have this thing to do. Great, let's do it. Done.
Yeah.
I feel like some point this season, Ben is going to find a way to be his own guy. Like, I feel like he's still so attached to Klaus.
We see in the fight that he is doing things with his powers, affecting things around him. I guess we don't know that that's any different than the way that he's been lifting up.
Right, he was lifting up Klaus. But it seems like
certainly more. Him using his tentacles to do stuff.
Yeah.
And, Klaus's powers are amplified, so it's possible that as a result that's that Ben's powers are amplified too, because he's able to make dead people attack people, which we haven't seen him do up until now. So
Right.
it's possible that, and as Ben's been talking about, he wants to get to San Francisco, I believe he's talking about. So part of his story is there.
Gotcha. I would kind of like to see him maybe find a way to exist independently of Klaus at some point.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it's
So
a fun little obstacle, but I think it's run its course.
Yeah, maybe that's a part of it, that, then he can give him a little more corporality.
Yeah, I like that. Corporality. The apocalypse is still well underway. And our team, everybody, I think, is now aware of everyone else. I feel like. I mean, Allison and Luther, for instance, all what's happening with Vanya? She's on a farm.
Yes.
What about Diego? He's in a nut house.
He's okay now. Yeah.
Yeah, and that they're all there. Oh, and Five's here too. Oh, is he? Okay. So I think they're all aware that each other is around. So that's something, which means that they're probably going to coalesce. And I think they're probably all aware that there's a apocalypse coming. So that's another check mark. Yep. Okay. Good.
Yep.
Now, Reginald's out there, still doesn't know his connection to these folks, but maybe is starting to think about that now that Five has tried to communicate with him. So where do you think this is going in episodes 5 and 6?
I think I've heard, so I'm just going to say that,
Sure.
I mean, and you can figure it out, too, that obviously they're going to talk to their father.
Sure.
So that's got to come.
Yep.
And so, obviously, we have to learn more about the commission. That's the word I was struggling for. I'm not entirely convinced that the handler. I'm not convinced that she actually sent those.
Oh, the Swedes.
The Swedes. That doesn't seem. That seems like that seems kind of fishy to me.
I mean, they did get the little canister that said that the Swedes. So that suggests it's from the. But you're saying from the commission, but not her. You're saying.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, because we know that she's on the outs. So this might be her plot to sort of get back in.
Okay.
So, I don't... So, yeah, so...
Like, in other words, she's going to use Lila. That's her intention, and maybe the Swedes
Lila
are the...
and Five, right? Because, that could be, okay, we're going to get rid of Five.
Good point.
Finally,
Why does she want to save Five at all costs?
Right.
It sounds like he's necessary to make the apocalypse happen? I don't know. It seems like she's like, oh, yeah, we got to keep him in play.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that she's trying to subvert the commission to gain power again. And once she's gained power, maybe she'll now we can kill Five.
We also certainly will see the event of the Kennedy assassination, and one way or another, either he'll be saved or he won't, and that's going to impact my theory is, because it seemed like the apocalypse happened with him still alive, that in some ways he's going to have to die to keep the apocalypse from happening. And so that there'll be somebody trying to save him and someone trying to kill him.
Maybe they do succeed in saving Kennedy, and that's when the 12 says, okay, we were going to kill him, right? Because that's what they're talking about.
That was they're talking about.
And so now we want this global thermonuclear thing to happen because for some reason we gained from that. So rather than having it being later, let's have it be now.
I got you. Also, just a note, I do like the way that the show transitions into its opening credits. It continually finds ways to show an umbrella pattern.
Oh, yes.
And so in the first episode, it was a mushroom cloud that turned into an umbrella. I thought that was really, really clever. Very cool. Enjoying the show. Thumbs up. We're almost halfway through it now. So on to episodes.
Now I can watch 5 and 6. Woohoo!
Yeah. 5. We've been watching him the whole time. I don't know. Yeah. So we'll be back talking about episodes 5 and 6. Thank you so much, Paul. Appreciate it, sir.
Welcome.
And have a good one, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.